Alright, today we're going to be looking at a piecewise function found on page 97, problem number 36 of the pre-calculus book. And this piecewise function, f of x equals, we have 1 over x, which is the reciprocal function, if x is less than 0, and we have the cube root of x if x is greater than or equal to 0. Now the first thing we're told to find is the domain. So part A, the domain. Well, for this function, it would be undefined at 0, but since 0 is non-inclusive, we can still say numbers less than 0. 0 is included in the second part of the function, and since 0 is defined here, we have 0, and we also have numbers greater than 0 as well as equal to 0. So that means this includes positive numbers and 0. The top portion includes the negative numbers. Our domain is all real numbers. We can write this as negative infinity to positive infinity in interval notation. We could choose to use set builder notation, where we have a function in x such that x is an element of the reals. That means all real numbers. And we could also just write out the words all real numbers. You do not have to do all three. You only need to choose one. Part B. We are told to find intercepts. I am going to hold off on finding intercepts until after we've graphed it, because that will make it more clear. Alright, for part C, we are going to graph, so why don't I come over here and graph this? It's my y-axis, my x-axis. Put some marks on here. And that's good. Now let's make a table. Alright, we're going to use some of the most common numbers. Alright, let's try something like -1 first. Alright, if I were to plug in -1, remember -1, we use the top graph. We would say 1 over -1, which is -1. So we plot the point -1, -1. Then I'm going to next plug in -2. Since I am now using the top function and only choosing negative numbers. If I put -2 in for x, I have 1 over -2, which is just -1/2. So I go left to -2 and I only go down halfway and put a dot. Now, what if I were to choose -1/2, because I want something closer to the y-axis, but see, I cannot put 0 in the top function. So I'm choosing negative 1/2. That means I put 1 over negative 1/2, which means I get negative 2. So the point negative 1/2, negative 2 is on the graph. This graph is a curve. It's going to ride right along that y-axis, but it does not cross either axis. Okay, so from the top portion, we don't get any intercepts. We can't say none because we have to check the bottom. So if I use the cube root of x, now the smallest number I can plug in is 0. So I'm going to plug in 0. If I plug in 0, the cube root of 0 is just 0. So I go up and I plot my point 0, 0. Right. Then the next number I'm going to choose is 1. Well, if I plug in 1, the cube root of 1 is 1. So I have the point 1, 1. I plot the point. Now, I could just choose to plug in numbers and get decimal values, or I could choose the next perfect cube, which is 8. If I plug in 8, the cube root of 8 is 2, because 2 cubed is equal to 8. Now, I only have 6 units here. I'm just going to make this longer. This would be where 7 is at. This is where 8 is at. And it took all the way over here just to get up to 2. So this is a curve. And there we have our graph. Now, our only intercept is the point 0, 0. So we can go back and answer part B, 0, 0. Part C we've just done, so let me label this C, the graph. Now, part D, we are asked to find, based on the graph, find the range. Well, do we have positive numbers? Yes. And they go on for continuously on our graph. We have 0 and we have negative values. So our range is also all real numbers. So getting over here, part D, the range goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. If you want to use set builder notation, we say we have a function where y is our range and y is an element of the reals. That means all real numbers. Or we could just write out the words, all real numbers. And our last part is part E. Part E asks us, is F continuous on its domain? That means, can I draw this graph without picking up my pen? And the answer is no. Okay, so I'd say no. It is discontinuous at x equals 0. And there we have it. piecewise function, and we have found the domain, the range, the intercepts, points of discontinuity, and we've drawn the graph.